So, thanks to a discussion brought up to me on my Discord server, I decided to take this racism test. Now, when I saw someone whose username and avatar is a fictional cartoon character who in the show was known to be a racist and misogynist, I took him sharing his results as him living the gimmick. To me, it's like if Hulk Hogan decided one day to take this test and go full on Hollywood Hogan mode and share his results. That's what I took it as. I took it as a joke. But when I got called out for saying that the test was probably a joke, I decided to give it a shot. Now, if you yourself want to check this test out, the links to it are in the description. The 20-question test comes from the Individual Differences Research, IDRLabs.com. So here we go. Question 1 of 20. It is okay to portray non-whites in Western movies in accordance with racial stereotypes. Example, Arabs as prone to violence, Asian as non-assertive, etc. Okay, of course it's not okay to racial stereotype everything. But it also just depends on the movie or the show and what story is being told. There are lots of movies where Arabs and Islamic terrorists are the bad guys. For example, my favorite Schwarzenegger movie, True Lies. There's even bits where the bad guys die in comedic ways, like this bit. And this bit.
You're fired.
But it's not necessarily saying Islamic terrorism is funny. It's an action comedy. So you really can't take it too seriously. So let's leave my answer as down in the middle. Question 2 of 20. It is okay to make jokes about the food that is served in restaurants owned by non-whites. Example, lots of garlic in restaurants owned by Arabs and dog meat in Asian restaurants. Again, if you do it for comedic effect, then yeah, there really isn't anything wrong with it. Make jokes about how greasy and filthy a lot of American burger joint places are. Make jokes about parasites in bad sushi restaurants. I once ate at a Korean barbecue joint in LA and did not see the B grade card on the window till after I paid and left. Let's just say I didn't leave my toilet that night after I got home. Point is, no ethnic food should be immune. If it's bad food, it's bad food. So let's mark it here as agreed. Question 3. It may sometimes be necessary for Western governments to detain or investigate non-whites for actions that would not arouse suspicion if done by white people. Okay, yeah, I can agree that police shouldn't immediately target minorities on things that they turn a blind eye to if they see it was done by a white guy. They need to get the facts straight before getting the suspect description out. And if you present me with a clear case of this happening, where they immediately go after the black guy, then I'll stand with you and say that that's wrong. So my answer to this question is disagree. Question 4. Western history books should take care to stress the contributions of non-whites to Western civilization. So my answer here is no, it should not be stressed based on skin color. You can't just say, oh, there's too many important advancements in Western civilization made by white people. We need to dig and include which ones were done by non-whites. And it also really just depends on the timeline of contributions you're talking about. Like, for example, if you're going to talk about the history of R&B and rock and roll, then of course you have to stress what people like Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Ray Charles did. And when it comes to the heavier side of rock music, you have to include what Jimi Hendrix and Phil Lynott did to influence bands like Van Halen and Metallica, who came after them. If there legitimately is something that adds to the bigger picture in history that non whites had a hand in contributing, then yeah, include it if necessary. But let's say it's a unit on Henry VIII in your world history unit, then no, you're really not going to find any contributions from non whites there. Contrary to what Netflix tried doing, sorry, Anne Boleyn, the mother of Queen Elizabeth I, was not black. So my answer there is disagree. Question 5. It is offensive to tell non whites that they speak English so well. Really? This is a question on the racism test. This is a stupid question. I've worked with foreigners whose first language is either French, Spanish, Mandarin, etc. And when they tell me that English is their second language despite sounding Californian, I'll still compliment them by saying, "Oh, wow, I wouldn't have known that. Your English sounds perfect to me." That's nothing bad. And when I was still coaching ice hockey, my last year we had a family who practically escaped Russia before that Russia-Ukraine conflict happened. And the mother remarked to me that they're doing their best to learn and speak English. And I said, "Oh, don't worry, your English is better than a lot of people." So no, it is not offensive when it's meant to be a compliment, especially when a lot of foreigners can be total dicks when you don't speak their language correctly. So I strongly disagree with this one. Question 6 of 20. White people have a duty to educate themselves on the racist actions of their forebears. God damn it. Again, it depends on how you do it. When I was younger, yeah, we learned about Black history and how they were slaves in the United States in the Deep South until the Civil War freed them. Of course, we learned about the segregation laws, which led to civil rights and MLK in the 60s. It was done in the tone of, this is what happened, slavery was wrong, segregation was wrong, we don't do it anymore. We should treat everyone equally. But when this goes overboard is when curriculums seem to demonize white people and make current whites try to feel guilty for the sins of their ancestors. I'm fine with going over Black history and overcoming racial animosity of that time period as long as it's a way to talk about empathy, talk about responsibility for your actions, and healing the relationships. What I'm not fine with is going over that period of history with the goal of further division, justified hatred, and continuing to blame and shame whites in the 21st century for shit they didn't do. Sorry, you're not going to make me feel guilty for being white because of what white people did decades ago in the Deep South, especially because up until the 50s, my ancestors were in Eastern Europe dodging bombs being dropped on their cities with 2 world wars. And then they moved to California, where segregation wasn't really a thing anymore like it was in the Southeast. So my answer here will remain neutral. Question 7 of 20. It's okay to portray non-whites in commercials as acting subserviently towards whites. And if you don't know what that word means, it means submissive. Again, another stupid question. College researchers thought of this shit? Once again, I say it depends on the story or what's being presented. No, you shouldn't have every commercial depict a non-white person bending to the knee of a white person and vice versa. You want to make a commercial depicting a 9-to-5 worker dealing with an overbearing boss who treats them unfairly? Then the skin color shouldn't matter. So my answer, again, it's going to be in the middle. Question 8 of 20. It is offensive to suggest to non-whites that they look like celebrities who share their ethnicity. For example, Asian people look like Bruce Lee and Black people look like Will Smith. Again, another stupid question. Do they not realize this was a Seinfeld joke 30 years ago?
They don't ever tell you look a lot like Sugar Ray Leonard? You do? Yeah, you must do that all the time.
I suppose we all look alike to you, right, Costanza?
What? No, it's not a racial thing. There really is a resemblance. Don't you think he looks like Sugar Ray? Come on, somebody back me up. Come on. Little help.
This time, George, you sunk to a new low.
Check, please.
Hey, Sugar Ray Leonard can eat here on the house.
And that episode addressed this issue better with comedy. That's how you do it. And then, of course, this bit from Rush Hour 2 comes to mind.
Sorry, man. Oh, y'all look alike. Watch out!
Obviously, it depends on the context. Yes, it is offensive if it's generalized to say all ethnic minorities look the same. But come on now. We know Will Smith does not look like Kevin Hart. Bruce Lee did not look like Jet Li. But is it possible for someone to innocently mistake Cuba Gooding Jr. for Terrence Howard? Or someone mistook Coco Jones for Jennifer Hudson? So my answer here is once again down the middle. Question 9. Racism in Western countries is mostly a thing of the past. Depends on what politician you ask, to be honest. But in my opinion, yeah, racism exists, and we do need to target it. But compared to 70 years ago, white racism against minorities is definitely mainly a thing of the past. Not saying it doesn't happen anymore, but not as much as it was before. So it's not that hard of an answer. Here, I agree. Question 10 of 20. It is okay to assume non-whites live up to their racial stereotypes. Example, black people good at sports, Asians good at math. Here, I can definitely say, no, it's not safe to assume ethnic groups always live up to their stereotypes. It's the same thing in question 1. Yeah, you shouldn't just stereotype everyone. But just because you shouldn't assume, it doesn't mean you can't joke about it.
You doctor yet?
No, Dad, I'm 12.
Talk to me when you doctor.
These wax figures represent how some intolerant people have labeled minorities. Here we see a black person eating chicken and watermelon, a stereotype that hurts the African American community.
Ah, here's a good one. It's the stereotypical sleepy Mexican.
What? Oh, man, what time is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were a wax sculpture.
No, man, I'm the janitor. I'm supposed to be cleaning, but I'm so tired. Oh, I'm so sleepy.
Another issue is it has to be applied across the boards. And oftentimes, the people who scream racism are often saying racist things themselves. Using the latest ICE raids and mass deportations of illegal immigrants out of the USA as an example. Many people on the left saying, well, who's going to pick our fruit crops then? It's the same thing that Southern Democrats in 1865 said. Well, who's going to pick our cotton after the slaves got freed? Immediately relegating an ethnic group to do shit jobs for slave wages is in itself a racial stereotype. So I'll keep my answer here as disagree. Question 11 of 20. It's okay to ask non-whites if they know a friend, coworker, or classmate of yours who is the same race as they are. Again, a stupid, generalized statement that really should not even be an issue at all in a racism test. And what else do I keep emphasizing? Context is key. If you're at a close environment like a school, let's say you meet Tyrone, who's in your class, and you find that both of you are fans of the same sports team, and you ask, hey, have you met or do you know Everett? He's also a fan. That's an attempt to connect over a shared interest. Nothing wrong with that. I was friends with a Korean who owned a burger joint and also frequented a sushi place that was owned by a Korean that my dad was friends with. These restaurants were both in the same town, mind you, and I knew that these men were both devout Korean Catholics. So, because my assumption was that they went to the same church in town, I remember asking my burger joint friend if he knew the sushi restaurant owner. That's way different than asking Mr. Yu from New York if he knows Mr. Chang from Chicago, or if Shaniqua from LA knows Brandy from Miami. So I'll leave my answer here as neutral again. Question 12 of 20. It is okay to assume that people mostly have friends that share their own ethnicity. For crying out loud, this is the same as question 11. No, it is not okay to assume. It is not that hard of a question, and it deserves a simple answer. No, so I disagree. Question 13 of 20. It is offensive to suggest that people of all the same non-white ethnicity look alike. That all black people look alike, that all Asians look alike. Did we not already have this question? This is a repeat of question 8 with different wording. While it can be a little offensive to suggest that people of the same ethnicity look the same, but the thing is, there's usually no ill intent when mistaking someone who is Chinese for someone who is Japanese. It's the old King of the Hill joke.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
I live in California last 20 years, but first come from Laos.
Huh?
Laos. We lay ocean.
The ocean? What ocean?
We are lay ocean. From Laos, stupid. It's a landlocked country in Southeast Asia. It's between Vietnam and Thailand, okay? Population 4.7 million.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
Oh.
You can easily mistake a Latino or Spaniard for someone who's actually Italian or Greek. Many Middle Easterners of Persian descent can be mistaken for a white European. Someone from India could be mistaken for Pakistani. If you are an American tourist going through a tour of the Asian countries, at first glance, yeah, the locals will look similar in each country. It takes very keen-eyed observers to notice the small differences in facial structures. And it is generally the culture and the attire that helps differentiate it. And also, as someone who works with people in the public eye and is always talking to people from different countries, I still cannot always tell what ethnicity the family is. And I have to try and listen closely and pick up phrases I know from respective languages to be able to figure it out. Once more, this answer is neutral. Question 14 of 20. It is okay to portray non-white characters in TV shows as speaking poor and or heavily accented English. Of course it's okay. Some of the most famous characters in pop culture have done so, like Apu from The Simpsons or freaking Mr. Miyagi, man. My opa spoke English with a heavy European accent. He was often asked where he was from, and he would say, well, I'm from Yugoslavia, but I'm a proud American. English itself may be the most spoken language on the planet, but for the majority of English speakers around the globe, it's their second or even their third language. So of course, they're going to have an accent. Saying they shouldn't depict foreign characters as such is denying reality. So I will agree on this question. Question 15 of 20. It is offensive to ask non-whites where are they really from.
What? What country you from? What? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what? What? English, motherfucker! Do you speak it? Yes. Then you know what I'm saying. Yes. Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like. What? Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
Again, context is key. Do I really need to play that King of the Hill clip again? Do I really need to mention how people would ask my opa that exact same question all the time? For the most part, no, it is not offensive. In some ways, especially when there's a language barrier, I'm trying to help interact with the person I'm trying to give instructions to. When I do my public job in LA, I'm genuinely curious where the foreign tourists are visiting from. Sometimes, due to the language barrier, it's necessary to find out where they're from. If I ask what language or where they're from and they tell me, then I can easily pull up Google Translate and communicate that way. Or sometimes I might have a colleague that can speak their language and translate for me. People will see my last name and ask me where it's from all the time. It does not offend me at all, regardless of skin color or ethnicity. It should not offend people when they get asked where they're from. Because usually it's out of curiosity, an attempt to connect, and wanting to learn more about the person, not out of malicious racial intent. So, yes, I disagree on this one. Question 16 of 20. We're in the home stretch now. It is legitimate for Western countries to impose stricter immigration restrictions on people from non-white countries than they do for immigrants from white countries. Okay, no. It should be applied across the board equally. Both borders should be protected equally, and the countries involved need to be working together to secure their borders. Whether the person comes from Latin America or Europe or the Middle East or Africa or Asia, they all need to apply for entry the same legal way and be judged equally based on merits. But if statistically you're dealing with far more crossings from the southern border and dealing with an influx of people from Mexico, Central and South America versus from Canada, then yeah, more resources and stricter policies need to be directed towards the southern border. And the other thing is, the US under the Biden administration was the only country that seemed to be okay with the open borders the way they were. If you tried that shit with any other country, they don't care where you're from, and they won't let you in as easily as the US did. So I will leave this answer as neutral. Question 17 to 20 reads, I don't really think minorities in the West were historically the target of racist actions. Okay, easy answer. Yes, they were. So we will strongly disagree on that answer. Next. Question 18 of 20. It's okay to portray minorities in commercials as being bad at English. You fucking kidding me? This is question 14 again. This time in commercials instead of TV shows. So I'll give you the same shitty answer. Yes, it's okay. And while you're at it, portray whites as bad at English too. There's plenty of white people who can't speak proper English. Question 19 of 20. It is offensive to ask non-whites if they can teach you sports that people of their race have traditionally been good at. Okay, no, you shouldn't just go up to a random black person and ask, hey, can you teach me basketball? Or going up to a random Latino and asking them to teach you soccer. That would be a very awkward interaction. Come on, it's like foreplay. You got to build up to it first. Maybe buy a Canadian coffee before you ask them to teach you hockey. This shouldn't be conjured up in a test specifically made by researchers on racism. This should be a simple common sense question. Don't assume anyone is good at anything. Is it necessarily offensive? Maybe the way the question depicts it? Sure. So in the spirit of the test, I'll say I agree, but it's a stupid question. But here we go. The final question. Question 20 of 20. It is okay to assume that the kitchens in restaurants owned by non-whites are generally dirtier than the kitchens in restaurants owned by whites. This is all the way back to question 2 with stereotyping the food at ethnic restaurants. No, it is not okay to just assume. You don't assume the restaurant is bad or good depending on the ethnicity of the owner or the chef. And the thing is, typically non-American style restaurants are going to be owned by non-whites. So if you love your sushi, your Mexican, your Chinese takeout, then you know the ethnicity of the owner or the chef is probably going to be their respective label. And it doesn't cross your mind unless you interact with them. If the place is good and keeps good standards with cleanliness and quality of food, then it will get good reviews, good word of mouth, and stay open. And at that point, nobody's going to give two shits what the owner or chef looks like. And here are my results. So according to this test, it basically says I'm 2% more prone to general racism than the average person. Well, you know what? I would like to think that I gave pretty average answers said by a normie. So that kind of basically says, no, I'm not really a racist person. But here we go. It says 26% more prone to socio-historical racism than the average person, denotes social attitudes that portray non-whites as being inferior to whites and that neglect historical racism in the West. What the fuck? Never once did I imply that non-whites are inferior to whites in this rant. And I've even acknowledged that, yes, we can teach historical racism and the steps made to overcome it, but as a way to heal, not to keep dividing future generations. It said I'm 13% more prone to perpetual foreigner racism than the average person. This measures attitudes that signal to non-whites that they are incapable of assimilating fully, that they will never be fully, truly Western. Again, I'm the grandson and son of an immigrant who assimilated into United States society, and I want every immigrant who comes here legally to assimilate the same way my dad and grandparents did. Illegal immigrants, that's a different matter. While I know many of them have dreamer intentions, a lot of them do have nefarious motives. People smuggling drugs and sex trafficking, plus those on terror watch list, having the potential to come and go completely unaccounted for. And let's not forget about those who already have been convicted of crimes after coming in here illegally, especially those who have raped and murdered people. That's the group the Trump administration is trying to target. That is what people want out of this country. And then it says I'm 14% more prone to racism than the average person overall. The test taker's total racism is defined by researchers Lang, Lee, and Kim. Higher scores indicate a greater degree of racism according to their view. So it's all according to the view of these three researchers and whatever teams they did. Because of that, I really can't take this test that seriously. I feel like if I took a similar test with the same answers, I may get different results because the tester's views on racism are not the same as the previous one. And one thing I did notice consistently was it made sentences with key phrases with non-white, as in non-white stereotyping, non-white assumptions, non-white portrayals in media, offensive questions for non-whites. At the same time I was reading these questions, I thought, is this test trying to make me feel guilty for being white? Or is it trying to make me feel guilty for laughing at stereotypical jokes over the years? Like, what's the agenda of this thing? It's almost like this thing is implying there is no racism against whites, as if Disney didn't just get caught admitting to racist hiring practices against whites. As if DEI and affirmative action going overboard in the last few years didn't become a contributing campaign factor in Donald Trump getting reelected. So those were the answers and my results. If you genuinely want to discuss my answers or your answers and your own results, then I'm always down to chat in the comments or on my Discord server. I'm Desert Couch 22. Thanks for listening.